Welcome to Washington Today for Monday, December 29, 2025. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thank you for joining us. A busy 2 days for President Trump at his estate in Florida. Today, he welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The president told reporters as he greeted the prime minister that Hamas must disarm so the region can move quickly into phase 2 of his Gaza peace plan. The president also said he'd support another attack on Iran if it rebuilds its missile program. President Trump also talked to Russian President Vladimir Putin today and answered questions from reporters about a possible land attack by U.S. forces against Venezuela. And he answered questions on Chinese military drills near Taiwan. All of this comes after yesterday's visit with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. We'll tell you all about it coming up. The president greeted Prime Minister Netanyahu at about 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time this afternoon. Following a lunch meeting, they spoke with reporters.
We had a big meeting with a lot of people, a lot of talent from Israel and from the U.S. And I think we came to a lot of conclusion and conclusions. And there's very little difference in what we're looking at and where we want to be, where we want to go. And so I just want to thank you for spending time. I know you're going to be over here for a couple of days, and maybe we'll be surprising us on New Year's Eve. That'll be fine.
Well, thank you.
And it's wonderful seeing you and Sarah and your whole group. Very talented group. We've done very good work together, and it'll continue. So thank you very much, baby.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have to say that in addition to what I said, that we've never had a friend, even close, a friend, as President Trump in the White House. I think he's been extraordinary in his friendship and his support for Israel, his principled positions, his willingness to just cut through and get to the essence of things. And I don't say that as a compliment. I just mean it. People have heard me say that behind your back, Mr. President, many times. But I want to say something else. I think we have a partnership, if I can quote you, second to none. I think it's allowed us to do enormous things. You know, people said there was a different conception at one time, which means that America can advance its interest in the Middle East if it opens a lot of daylight between it and Israel. And President Trump has done the exact opposite. He's achieved remarkable things in the Middle East because we work together. We talk about our ideas. Sometimes we have different ideas, but we work it out. And most of the time we see eye to eye. But it's been a remarkable experience, and this was a very, very productive meeting. And may I say, a very good lunch. Thank you. Thank you for your friendship.
Thank you very much, baby.
And thank you for your support. It's meant from the heart.
Thank you.
The Washington Post writing Netanyahu arrived in Florida for his fifth visit with the president this year as Israel's approach to Gaza and Iran increasingly complicates the Trump administration's diplomatic efforts. Israel and Hamas have accused each other of not fully implementing the first phase of the peace plan, slowing Washington's efforts to advance the second phase, focused on dismantling military and weapons infrastructure in Gaza. That all from the Washington Post. And the president was asked about that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are you concerned that Israel is not moving quickly enough to phase 2 of the peace plan?
Well, I'm not concerned about anything that Israel's doing. I'm concerned about what other people are doing or maybe aren't doing. But I'm not concerned. They've lived up to the plan. They're strong. They're solid. And sometimes they don't understand when somebody violates something that you want to give them a second chance. Well, we'll give them a couple of second chances. But no, Israel's lived up to the plan 100%. Don't forget, we made the plan possible by taking out Iran. And speaking of Iran, I hope they're not trying to build up again, because if they are, we're going to have no choice but very quickly to eradicate that buildup. So I hope Iran is not trying to build up, as I've been reading that they're building up weapons and other things. And if they are, they're not using the sites that we obliterated, but they're using possibly different sites. We know exactly where they're going. what they're doing. And I hope they're not doing it because we don't want to waste the fuel on a B-2. It's a 37-hour trip both ways. I don't want to waste a lot of fuel.
And as we mentioned, the president was asked about China's new military drills near Taiwan.
Exercises basically to test encircling Taiwan. Can you explain to us what your knowledge is of that? What do you think about that? Have you had any discussions with China about that?
Relationship with President Xi, and he hasn't told me anything about it. I certainly have seen it, but he hasn't told me anything about it, and I don't believe he's going to be doing it.
Does it worry you?
No, nothing worries me.
But
nothing.
you said where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So if you're if you're doing naval exercises and air exercises.
We've been doing naval exercises for 20 years in that area. Now people take it a little bit differently, but in fact larger than they're doing right now. So we'll see. But they've been doing that for 20, 25 years. Yeah.
CNN writing today that those military drills are aimed at sending a, quote, serious warning against any push for Taiwanese independence and, quote, external forces interfering with the island. The exercises, dubbed Justice Mission 2025, would take place in 5 maritime and airspace zones encircling the island. They would start tomorrow. Taiwan's government has condemned the drills, accusing China of military intimidation, while its defense ministry said it was fully on guard and would take concrete action to defend the values of democracy and freedom. That reporting from CNN. The president also spoke to reporters as he greeted Prime Minister Netanyahu on the Mar-a-Lago steps, and there he was asked about a possible Ukrainian attack on President Vladimir Putin's residence in northern Russia.
We'll see you later.
Are you worried that the alleged strike on Putin's residence could scuttle peace?
Yeah, I don't like it. It's not good. I heard about it this morning. You know who told me about it? President Putin told me about it. Early in the morning, he said he was attacked. It's no good. It's no good.
Russian officials
Don't forget, the Tomahawks. I stopped the Tomahawks. I didn't want that. Because we're talking about, it's a delicate period of time. This is not the right time. It's one thing to be offensive, because they were offensive. It's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do any of that, and can't do it. And I learned about it from President Putin today. I was very angry about it.
Do you not have U.S. intelligence services?
What?
Don't you have U.S. intelligence services that monitor that region very closely? Is there any evidence?
Well, it came out. Well, we'll find out. I mean, you're saying maybe the attack didn't take place. It's possible too, I guess. But President Putin told me this morning it did.
Reuters reported that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Ukraine had attacked the residence overnight with 91 long-range drones, all of which were destroyed by Russian air defenses. Reuters also reporting that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the accusation was a lie and an attempt to undermine peace talks. As we said, President Zelensky was in Florida yesterday to talk to President Trump, and we'll play you some of what they said in a minute. But today, President Trump was also asked about comments he made yesterday on WABC radio in New York that the U.S. military, quote, knocked out a, quote, big facility in Venezuela.
Can you say anything more about the explosion in Venezuela that you mentioned in a radio interview? Did the military do that? Can you share any more details about that?
Well, it doesn't matter, but there was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. They load the boats up with drugs, so we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around.
Is that the only strike that the U.S. has done in South?
I don't want to comment.
USA Today writing, quote, a strike on Venezuelan territory would constitute a significant escalation of Trump's ongoing pressure campaign to oust Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Since September, the Trump administration had launched dozens of strikes on boats that it is accused without providing evidence of carrying drugs. That from USA Today. Here's more from the president this afternoon.
Taken out by the U.S. military, or was it another entity like the CIA?
It was well, I don't want to say that. I know exactly who it was, but I don't want to say who it was.
We don't know.
But, it was along the shore.
Mr. President, have you or anyone in your administration talked to Maduro in recent days?
Well, I spoke to him.
Recently?
Pretty recent. reasonably, but nothing much comes of it. Yeah.
Mr. President, can you explain the
You
importance
have to
of...
understand what he's done. They've sent billions of dollars of drugs in. But maybe just as bad, they've sent hundreds of thousands of people in from jails, from prisons, from mental institutions and insane asylums. The drug lords, the drug dealers were all sent into our country. But think of it, what he's done. Tren de Aragua, probably the worst gang. They cut off people's fingers. One man made a phone call to complain about them. He cut off their hand. They cut off his hand. Don't ever make a phone call again. We'll cut off your other hand. After that, we'll kill you, they said. That was in Colorado. They sent in all of the bad ones. They sent in some bad people. And that to me was just terrible. And they send in drugs. Now, I will say this. 97% of the drugs coming in by sea stopped. We're trying to figure out who the other 3% are. They have a hard time getting people to pilot those boats. But 97% of the drugs coming in by the ocean, by the sea, by water, are gone. Every boat that we take out, we save 25,000 lives of Americans.
And more from Reuters on this incident. A Venezuelan chemical company has denied online rumors that a fire it suffered at one of its plants on Christmas Eve was what the president was talking about. The company said the fire was quickly extinguished and was under investigation. Nearby residents told Reuters they heard an explosion, saw the fire, and smelled chlorine. Now to the Russia-Ukraine war and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit with President Trump yesterday. As we said, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on social media today that President Trump had, quote, a positive call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Today, here's what President Trump and President Zelensky said to reporters yesterday following their meeting.
So I just want to say we've done very well. We've had discussions on just about every subject. And that includes with President Putin before. And we went into great detail, and we likewise went into great detail today. And it was an honor to have you at Mar-a-Lago and have lunch. I hope you enjoyed the food. Your people enjoyed the food, I can tell you that. You're big, strong people. Your general over there looks like central casting. I want to also, by the way, speaking of generals, we have a great general. General Raisin Kane, who is here someplace. Thank you, General. Thank you very much. He's great. So, Mr. President, maybe you want to say a few words, and then we'll speak over the next couple of weeks. We'll speak probably quite a bit, but we'll speak tomorrow. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything. Dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank President Trump for a great meeting at this amazing place in his home in Mar-a-Lago. And we had a really great discussions on all the topics, and we appreciate the progress that was made by American and Ukrainian teams in these recent weeks. Special thanks to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and thank you for their engagement and full commitment, and also to our team, and first of all to Rustem Umerov and General Gnatov, and to all our teams. And we discussed all the aspects of the peace framework, which includes, and we have great achievements, 20-point peace plan, 90% agreed, and U.S.-Ukraine security guarantees 100% agreed. U.S.-Europe-Ukraine security guarantees almost agreed. Military dimension 100% agreed. Prosperity plan being finalized, and we also discussed the sequencing of the following actions. And we agree that security guarantees is the key milestone in achieving lasting peace, and our teams will continue working on all aspects. We also had a joint productive call with European leaders, like President Trump said already, and a lot of leaders, including NATO and the EU. And we agreed that our teams will meet in upcoming weeks to finalize all discussed matters. And we agreed with President Trump that he will host us, and maybe in Washington, European leaders and Ukrainian delegation, yes, in January. And Ukraine is ready for peace. And once again, would like to thank President Trump for a warm welcome and substantial discussion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
The Associated Press reporting negotiators are still searching for a breakthrough on key issues, including whose forces withdraw from where in Ukraine. President Zelensky was asked about that and the possibility that any peace plan may have to be approved by the Ukrainian people.
Mr. President, what is your take on Donbas status? Are you prepared to see it as a free economic or demilitarized zone?
No, we spoke about 20 points plan, and I'm happy that really our team's very close to results. And I agree with President Trump that our teams worked not one day, not one week, more than 1 month, beginning from Geneva, then 2 meetings in Miami, then we had Berlin, and now we have Mar-a-Lago. So this is a very difficult question. You know our position, so it's we have to respect our law and our people. We respect the territory which we control. And of course, our attitude is very clear. That's why President Trump said this is a very tough question. And of course, we have with Russians different positions on it.
And have you discussed referenda about...
when we speak about referendum, we spoke that it's one of the key. We can have referendum on any kind of points of this plan. I said that we can use referendum like for the plan, or we cannot use referendum. It's one of the key. We can use, this possibility of parliament to vote according to the law or to have referendum. It doesn't matter. This referendum, if the plan will be very difficult for our society, very difficult, of course our society has to choose and has to vote, because it's their land, the land not of one person, it's the land of our nation for a lot of generations.
They'll probably have to get their plan approved by Parliament or by referendum of the people. You would think that I know they had a poll that it's 91% in favor of ending this war, so they want to end it. Like everybody wants. Russia wants it ended, everybody wants it ended, and we want it ended. I want it ended because I don't want to see so many people dying. We're losing massive numbers of people, the biggest by far since World War II. So we want to see it ended, absolutely.
So what were the takeaways from yesterday's meeting? Here's Bloomberg News White House correspondent Kate Sullivan.
I think the big takeaway from yesterday was that there actually was no breakthrough. There was no announcement. There were very few specifics, and it's unclear. It's really unclear exactly how it moved the needle. I do think that it's notable that the meeting even happened. The president had said previously that at this point, after months and months of negotiations, that he wouldn't be meeting directly with President Zelensky or President Putin unless this peace deal was really in the final stages and really kind of looking like there was an end in sight. So I do think it's notable that Zelensky flew to Mar-a-Lago to meet with the president at this stage. But, as you heard in that clip, the president is really projecting an optimistic tone here and saying, we're 90% there, we're closer than ever before. But that last 10% is really these really important key sticking points that have been thorny issues throughout this entire process. And it's really unclear whether either side are willing to make real compromises there. There are talks about it's mostly centered around the territory and whether Ukraine would need to cede territory that Russia doesn't even control at the moment. So there's still a lot up in the air. We still need to hear more details about security guarantees. The president was quite candid yesterday and said, nobody knows what those security guarantees are going to look like, but that's a very critical part of all of this.
Right. I wanted to talk to you more about that 10% or 5%, as the president put it yesterday, about unresolved issues. We have territory like the Donbas region. We know that there has been some conversation about whether or not these changes that would happen in a peace agreement would have to go to the Ukrainian people in a referendum. Of course, security guarantees. I wonder if there are other major sticking points outside of those two, or even, just drilling down on those two that you can walk us through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are definitely the big outstanding ones. Russia has demanded that Ukraine cede the entire Donbas region, and Ukraine has said that they won't give up any territory. And like I said, those two positions, we've not seen any willingness from Russia at all to compromise on that really core issue for them. I think Ukraine has, there have been discussions about whether there might be some kind of demilitarized zone or a free economic zone where troops from both countries would withdraw, and there would be some kind of international troop, monitoring of that area. And so I think that's very much part of the discussions right now. And when it comes to security guarantees, it's really interesting. I was in Berlin when Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who doesn't have an official role in the administration, but is definitely playing a very big role, particularly in these peace talks. And the big thing that came out of that meeting where they met with Zelensky in Berlin was that the United States did commit to providing what they described as Article 5-like security guarantees. So, it's a huge commitment. It's something that it was a question for a while whether the United States would even provide security guarantees at all. So that was definitely a very big development. I think they're still trying to, as we heard from the president, they don't know what those details are going to look like yet. And I would also just add that anything that's worked out between the United States and Ukraine then needs to be taken to Russia for approval if there's going to be any kind of deal between Russia and Ukraine. So that's also a huge question mark, whether any of the work that's happening right now, at the leader level, at working level, whether Russia would even approve it. So, a lot of questions still remain, a lot of key sticking points in this very complicated process that the president, wishes was wrapped up, like he said, in 24 hours after he promised on the campaign trail. Jasmine, I know you were on the campaign trail a lot and heard him say this a lot. But he thought that he was going to have this wrapped up long ago, and it's now been quite a long time.
Bloomberg News White House correspondent Kate Sullivan on this morning's Washington Journal. You can see all of our coverage from today's meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, yesterday's meeting with President Zelensky at cspan.org and the C-SPAN Now mobile app. You're listening to Washington Today.
On this episode of Book Notes Plus with our host, Brian Lamb.
This week's encore interview is from Book Notes from September the 21st, 1997, 28 years ago. Our guest was Peter J. Gomes, former minister of the Memorial Church at Harvard. His father was from Cape Verde Islands, and his mother was an African American. In 1991, he identified himself as gay, but says he remained celibate. Professor Gomes passed away in 2011 at age 69. During his lifetime, he received over 40 honorary degrees. Professor Gomes was a registered Republican for most of his life and offered prayer at the inaugurations of Presidents Reagan and George H.W. Bush. However, in August of 2006, he changed his registration to the Democratic Party.
We revisit an interview with Peter Gomes and his book, The Good Book, Reading the Bible with Mind and Heart. Book Notes Plus, with our host, Brian Lamb, is available wherever you get your podcasts and on the C-SPAN Now app.
Welcome back to Washington Today. From the New York Times, the Virginia man arrested this month on charges of placing 2 pipe bombs in Washington on the night before the January 6th, 2021 attack on the Capitol has given a detailed confession, that according to court papers released on Sunday night. The Times writes, in the public first hint at the motive in the case, the documents said that the man, Brian J. Cole Jr., felt he needed to speak up after he began to suspect that the 2020 election, in which President Trump was defeated, had been tampered with. The Time goes on to write, the papers filed by the Justice Department and Federal District Court in Washington gave an extensive description of Mr. Cole's initial interview with the FBI after his arrest. At first, the government's filings said Mr. Cole denied planting the bombs outside the Republican and Democratic Party headquarters on the eve of the Capitol attack, but the filings said he admitted to doing so after agents displayed an image captured from surveillance cameras that they said showed him in a hooded sweatshirt carrying a backpack on the same route the bomber took that night. The government's assertion that Mr. Cole confessed to planting the bombs came just 2 days before he was scheduled to appear in court for a hearing to determine his bail. Brian Cole's lawyers, who say he has severe autism, have not yet filed their own court papers laying out their views on the client's pretrial detention. That all from the New York Times today. Also in New York City today, outgoing Mayor Eric Adams talked about his administration's anti-crime efforts at a press conference. ABC7NY.com reports that homicides are down in the city more than 20%. That's the lowest number of homicides in the city since the pandemic. ABC7NY.com also reporting that shooting incidents are down 24% and the number of shooting victims are down 22%. Mayor Adams' term ends on Wednesday, and at today's event, he was asked about how much he's talked with incoming Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani.
He and I spoke, and as I shared to him when I spoke with him, what the conversations is in a zone of silence. If he wants to talk about what we spoke about, he could do so. Everyone that knows me, I have one reputation. I don't talk about things I have in private, and that's why people are willing to speak with me. So he could go into that. I shared my thoughts, and I don't want to get in the way of his administration.
Mayor Adams didn't say if he's planning to go to the mayor-elect's inauguration on January 1st. He told the New York Post's City Hall Bureau Chief Greg McCarthy, "I don't mind celebrating his day, but I don't want anything to disrupt his day. If he's cool, I'm cool." This morning, we wrapped up our Holiday Authors Week series on Washington Journal, and our guest today was Sarah Kendzior. She talked about her book, The Last American Road Trip. It's about her family's cross-country road trips through an era of political upheaval, the pandemic, and social change. This morning, she talked about why she wrote a memoir about the trips.
Well, my previous books were more analyses of our politics in the U.S., but while I was writing those, I was raising two kids, who were 5 and 9 in 2016 when we began taking these road trips across the country. I did this partly for the reason anyone would, to go on vacation, to see, other states, to see national parks, to see beautiful places. We did this on and off for 8 years. The book describes the period between 2016 and 2024, so a very tumultuous time. And a lot of my readers, I noticed, were struggling with how to raise children during this time and how to teach children what America is and how to be an American during this time. And it was important to me that my children see the country through their own eyes, not through pundits, not through TV shows or, other people's opinions, but firsthand, and get to meet their fellow countrymen, get to see, not just the atrocities that mar our history, but so many of the beautiful people and places that exist here.
Why do you refer to it as the last American road trip?
Well, as I said, this is a very tumultuous time, and every time we would set out on the road, I worried that this would be the last time, that this would be the last time we'd be able to move freely, that this would be the last time certain places we love to visit, like national parks, would be open. Of course, in 2020, when so much was shut down by COVID, I was deeply worried that this had come true. And, to be clear, I never set out to write a book like this. When we were driving around, in every direction, visiting different places, it was for fun. It was, I guess, in part for education, but mostly for fun. It was later on that I realized I had collected so many experiences that they told a story of America, of America's broader past, but also America during this time. And that, of course, includes the interlude, in 2020, 2021, where we traveled relatively, infrequently and not very far. And I had to, come up with some creative outdoor ideas to keep my kids occupied and keep them, interested in what was happening around us and not just in the most dire and gloomy way.
Author Sarah Kendzior talking about her book, The Last American Road Trip. You can see that discussion and all of our Authors Week segments at cspan.org and the C-SPAN Now mobile app. Also this week on the C-SPAN networks, we've been highlighting the most consequential moments, conversations, and coverage from 2025 with some of the year's most watched and talked about C-SPAN coverage. One of those moments, October 9th, House Speaker Mike Johnson came on Washington Journal in the midst of what would become the longest government shutdown in history. And he took this call from a C-SPAN viewer.
On the Republican line, Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Samantha, you're on with Speaker Johnson.
Hi, Mr. Johnson. So my question or comments are related to what you said yesterday about not being open to pass any legislation to ensure that military gets paid. I'm sure you can tell by my voice I'm very shaky. Just want you to hear a little bit about my family. I have 2 medically fragile children. I have a husband who actively serves this country. He suffers from PTSD from his 2 tours in Afghanistan. If we see a lapse in pay come the 15th, my children do not get to get the medication that's needed for them to live their life, because we live paycheck to paycheck. I heard you earlier say that you side with President Trump on anything that he says. Well, I just read an article this morning that said he absolutely wholeheartedly believes that there needs to be legislation put in so that we do not miss a paycheck. You have the power to do that. And as a Republican, I'm very disappointed in my party, and I'm very disappointed in you, because you do have the power to call the House back. You did that, or you refused to do that just for a show. I am begging you to pass this legislation. My kids could die. We don't have the credit because of the medical bills that I have to pay regularly. You could stop this, and you could be the one that could say military's getting paid. And I think that it is awful, and the audacity of someone who makes six figures a year to do this to military families is insane.
All right, Samantha.
Samantha, I'm so sorry to hear about your situation. The reason I've been so angry this week, and they've been calling me out on media, Johnson's angry. I am angry because of situations just like yours. I have a big military district, and my district is the home of the Global Strike Command at Barksdale Air Force Base and Fort Polk, the Joint Readiness Training Center. I have one of the biggest military districts and military families in America. I have a lot of airmen and soldiers who are deployed right now, and they have young families at home, and they have children in health situations like yours. This is what keeps me up at night. I want you to hear something very clearly. The Republicans are the ones delivering for you. We had a vote to pay the troops. It was the continuing resolution 3 weeks ago. Every single Republican but two voted to keep the government open so that your paycheck can flow. Every Democrat in the House, except for one, voted to close it. The Democrats are the ones that are preventing you from getting a check. If we did a vote on the floor to pay troops, it's not a lawmaking exercise, because Chuck Schumer is going to hold that up in the Senate. He is demonstrating by voting now 6 times to keep the government closed that he does not want the troops to be paid. And you should listen to his comments last night, as reported this morning. He is enjoying this. He said every day gets better for us, quote unquote. Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are preventing your family from getting the care they need, not Republicans, and my heart goes out to you.
And just so you know, Politico is reporting that House Democrats are preparing a letter to you, Speaker Johnson, urging a vote on troop pay.
Yeah, you know why they are? Because they all voted on the record 3 weeks ago to stop pay for the troops. They're desperate to try to get on the record, but that would be a show vote for Democrats. They do not care about it. They demonstrated that with their votes. Look at what they do and how they vote, not what they say.
From October 9th, House Speaker Mike Johnson taking calls on Washington Journal in the middle of what would become the longest government shutdown in history, one of our top moments from 2025 on the C-SPAN networks. You can watch our year-end marathons this whole week. They include discussions from Book TV's Book Fair coverage, a special lineup from our new weekly series, America's Book Club, with David Rubenstein, highlights from our America 250 coverage, and American History TV. We also remember influential people who passed away in 2025, and of course, our coverage of Congress, the White House, and the courts. You can find our complete year-end marathon schedule at cspan.org and C-SPAN Now. That's also where you can find this program as a podcast. It's also on YouTube. Just search Washington Today. And a reminder, the C-SPAN networks are now available on YouTube TV. To learn more, go to tv.youtube.com. And if you want more on the stories that are shaping Washington every day, get our daily email word for word. Just go to cspan.org/connect to subscribe. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thanks a lot for listening today to Washington Today.